Hello and welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host, Danille, and I'm here with Ken.
Hey guys, what's happening?
Today we are going to be talking about the global corporate tax that Janet Yellen announced this morning.
By the way, sorry for last week. We had a big company planning thing, and obviously, in order to pull all this off, we all got to get together.
Yeah, or once a month, or once a quarter,
once a
8-hour meeting.
Yeah, so we're going to try to schedule it on a different time. So sorry about not having it last week.
Yeah. So while we wait for everyone to join, what were you talking about just a second ago with the crew about LinkedIn?
I was just laughing. As you guys all know, how do you respond to stuff? Like, people DM me all the time.
Well, you were saying on LinkedIn, random people will send you a message like, how are you?
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? And I was just joking. I'm a guy, so I'm like,
right.
Good.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Anyway, it's a funny way to market yourself. Note to self. I sent one back to a kid. You'll love this. Kid sent me something, and I'm like, do your homework. That's what I sent back to him. It's like, he knew nothing. It was like a bot or something. I think it must have been a bot. Who knows? But anyway, so let's get on to the topics.
That's
what
funny.
Are we about?
First, let's welcome a few people here. We have Tammy Sue. She says, hey, Ken. William wants to know, are we really live? Yes, William, we are live.
We are live.
And we got, where's everybody from? So we have people from Utah, Florida. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, we're just waiting for you.
I know. The comments aren't coming through, so I didn't know if anything was wrong or
all right.
It's maybe nobody's commenting. I don't know. But anyway, so today we're talking about Janet Yellen. She came out this morning and said that they want everyone to be on the same page globally in the G20 and do a global corporate tax.
Yes. So this is a big topic, guys. So first of all, if you guys don't know, tax is and will be your biggest expense of your life. And that is a fact. So nobody thinks about it, but I remember, I think I was in my first job and I got my check and I was like, what? You know what I mean? Like when I was salaried.
All right. Yeah.
Well, I was like, what? And then I looked it up and it said something at the time, like you work basically till May for the government or for tax, and then the rest is yours. So it's a big number. It just gets kind of buried in there, and a lot of people don't really think about it.
Right, they don't really pay attention to it.
It's a big deal, and there's a lot of stuff. If you really want to dig into tax, you should, in my opinion. First of all, I don't know if people know, but as a U.S. citizen, you're taxed on your worldwide income. That's a big deal, and I think, I might be wrong, we're the only country in the world that does that. So in other words, we can't just move to somewhere, and we have to, I think it's expat. I think it's called an expat. You have to actually move, pay a big tax, move, and reset up. So as a U.S. citizen, you can't just go anywhere. And so now what they're doing is they're going after the corporations the same way. So that's how I see it.
Well, right, they are. Because basically, if you go to Ireland, there's a 12% tax rate for corporate. So everyone, all the big companies, the big tech companies are over there.
Interesting that you picked Ireland. So so there's a couple things. One, before we jump into corporate, I want people to know that this is a big deal, and it's not really going to affect us because they're going to go after the corporate tax, and so I don't think a lot of people are going to be too upset about that. But there's a couple other big things on the table, and if you guys really have dug down deep, you take a look at California. So California, in August of 2020. They brought, a proposal that said that I think it was 2088. So just Google this, tax policy 2088. It's called a wealth and exit tax. So if you live in California or used to live or have a businesses there and you relocated or whatever it is, there's a proposal out on the table that they can tax you for 10 years no matter where you go. So tax is a big thing, and the states, as things are moving around, as people migrate around, even if you lived in San Francisco and then you moved to, let's say, Nevada to work, and all these YouTube videos are why I left California. Well, trust me, California understands this. They're going to try to still tax you no matter where you're going. So this is now moving up to the corporate level.
Right. It's almost like, well, obviously governments need money because of COVID. Businesses aren't, are shutting down. People aren't working. So they need money and they need to pool money.
100%.
And they're kind of on the same page probably of raising their tax rates.
Yeah. Think of it as a business losing customers. That's how you have to think of it. So you have so many people in a state, California, we'll just pick on California. And they're, a lot of them are moving, and obviously that's revenue, right? Revenue loss. So it's the same thing in the U.S. They've done that with the citizens, but now it's moved to the corporate tax rate. So let's just go back here. The corporate tax rate was 35% under Trump. Trump lowered it to 21%. Remember, he was trying to say, made in America, made in America, made in America. But then he was still going after Amazon. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
He was going after Amazon, saying they're not paying any tax.
Because they're based in Ireland.
100%.
Yeah.
So, so in 2017, he passed that. And so Biden wants to take it from 21 to 28. So that's what it is. But this is a little bit different. This is a minimum corporate tax that Yellen's kind of coming out with. So let's just walk through. I think you guys need to understand a couple of things. Amazon is approaching $1 trillion or something, and they paid zero federal tax. Just Google this. You'll see. Zero. So, and you start to take a look at some of these countries that some of these businesses are based in. So we've got in Ireland, we've got Medtronic, Accenture, Pfizer. Obviously, everybody knows about Pfizer. Allergen, which is like a Botox, they're all in Ireland. In Canada, you got Burger King. In Belgium, you got Budweiser. In Switzerland, you got Purina and Nestle. So right under your nose, these big corporate, big iconic brands that you guys know, a lot of these are based outside of the United States, and there are reasons.
Well, and we're like a lot of them's number one customer. So we're their number one customer. Yeah. We're getting squeezed for taxes, and they're not really paying any to us.
Yeah. So this is obviously, so all those people, like any of these companies, they're trying to obviously, and by the way, it's all legal.
Yeah. So they're not breaking any laws.
It's 12.5%, and so a lot of these companies are. And by the way, these are global. They're global companies. They're doing global business. And so I don't know how all the accounting works, I don't, but the truth is a lot of these are based outside of the United States, and this is an opportunity for the federal government to go after corporate tax.
Yeah, DSG says Nike, Amazon, FedEx too are all based out of the country. So, well, and here's the thing though, how do you feel about that? I mean, because here they have two sides. They're saying it's good because it will help bring business back to the U.S., but then it's bad because corporate tax is the number one thing that slows economies. So I don't know. What is your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Well, so it's kind of the same way. That's why I brought up the individual U.S. person. Mm-hmm. So if I want to move personally to Europe, and I think I should be able to do that. I think I should be able to go there, set up my business, run whatever I want. And but if I do that now, I have to pay tax back to the United States. Mm-hmm. Even if I'm not doing business in the United States.
Right.
That's a fact. So, so I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. Now, obviously, this is a great way to fund that infrastructure bill. Infrastructure.
The infrastructure bill.
Yeah, hardly much, not much in there for infrastructure. But regardless, $2.3 trillion, this is a way to do that. And I don't think anybody's going to be too upset about this. Because it's
right, and they should pay tax.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree they should pay tax. Now, I weirdly enough see this going a different direction. So, with the corporate tax, I think the next thing that they might try to do in the States, this is just, conspiracy theory, but, everyone is now working from home, right? So if you want to move to a low tax state like Texas out of California, well, potentially if your company is based out of California, they might have some overreaching nationwide taxes or something like that, because you're going to have the same issue in the States now that everyone can work remotely.
Well, we're already seeing this. They did a great interview this weekend with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and whatever your position is fine on this. But they asked him a question: how many people are moving to Florida? And he's like, we don't even know. It's hard to count at this point, but endless amounts of companies, endless amounts of people are all moving to Florida for a number of reasons. And, whether you're, wherever you are on the fence is irrelevant. But the point is there are companies that are actually, and people that are actually moving there because of the way that state is run. And I think that's how you have to look at the whole thing.
Right.
It has a low tax rate, obviously, and lower than a lot of places. Mm-hmm. And so, if you have a business, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that are very mobile these days. To your point, work from home. And the states are basically trying to figure out a way to put their hooks in them, and create some more tax for that particular state.
Yeah, and as Jean points out on here, a big issue of all of that is the YouTube or the digital marketplace now, right? So before, if you were going to have a physical business, it kind of had to be in the country it was in for the most part. But now that you have all these big Facebook, Amazon, digital giants, they can really go wherever gives them the best tax rate, and they're a worldwide business.
They are a worldwide business, and that's actually the other issue. And if you have a lot of your business in another country, you're also paying tax in that country, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting. The other thing that complicates this even more is this cryptocurrency stuff.
Yes.
Which is just an interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
Fact is where's that money held?
Right.
And and how do you split that up?
And who taxes that? Yeah, or right, even if they figure out how to figure out where it is.
So that's all obviously something that's coming, but with all that going on, it just further complicates it. And what will happen, guys? The next wave of, in my opinion, is let's say California has a net out migration of people. It's 100% going to hurt their economy, period. Mm-hmm. The revenue, and all the revenues and things like that, and tourism and all those kinds of things, those all trickle up, basically. So all those taxes that you pay on your flying in there, on your rental car, on your hotel, and all the stuff that you do on sales tax and all that stuff, obviously property tax, all those kinds of things all roll up into these revenue coffers that pay for things, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what's happening. And the interesting thing with Ron DeSantis is when he was taking a look at whether or not to open or shut that state, he said, listen, I was looking at it from a budget standpoint. If we shut down, then we weren't going to hit our revenue numbers, and we had these big expenses, and it was going to hurt us in other areas. And that's why they stayed open. Obviously, there's a risk, with the virus and the pandemic and all those kinds of things. That was the risk. But they did it anyway, and he said that Florida beat their numbers from a tax standpoint, from a tax and revenue standpoint, and that's because of the people moving there as a result of these other states that were closed. And it was interesting. Somebody said, well, so people are moving there, for their businesses and all that. And he said a lot of people move there just to keep their kids in school. Yeah. Which I thought that was a really interesting point. He's like, they're like, listen, we don't want our kid to be on the shelf for a year from Zooming from home. So that was a big one, and especially if they had any kind of sports or all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. Obviously this isn't a corporate tax discussion.
Yeah.
But
it's a
revenue discussion, and I think that's what this is. This is a government's way to go after, some of these big companies that are based somewhere else, and pay for these.
Well, they want to do these programs, and like I said, the jobs are down, small businesses are closing, and they need the tax money somewhere, and you can only squeeze people above a certain income so hard, so they have to go after these big corporations.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a result of the people, for the election, right? I mean, bottom line, this is this is exactly these are the consequences and I'm not saying the money's not needed. I'm just saying that,
they shouldn't pay it.
This is why whoever you vote for is so important.
Matea says, thanks for your knowledge. But El Chamillo says, I feel like the more people get educated and wake up, the government is trying to find loopholes to get your money regardless of where you go.
Yeah. Hey, that's a really good point. So there are loopholes for tax, guys. I don't know, like Tom Wheelwright has a great book called Tax-Free Wealth. And I'm telling you, real estate is a great one. And obviously I'm a real estate guy, but you take a look at what the government wants you to do. They give you tax incentives.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that's going to come up in the next 10 years is additional tax incentives around housing. In fact, the infrastructure bill has a whole affordable housing component inside of there. So obviously it's marketed like it's an infrastructure bill, and everybody kind of probably believes that it's all about infrastructure. It's not. I think like 5% of the entire bill is actually truly for infrastructure. The rest are other things. And one of the pieces in there is affordable housing. So you're going to start to see this money, and everybody gets all wired about all these the stimulus, and of course it's going to create inflation, all those kinds of things we talked about. But I think if you really want to take a look at what you should do here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what's inside of these bills, because that's where the money's going. So these are going to pass.
Yep.
These are going to pass, guys. So take a look at, like, what does that affordable housing chunk mean? How's it going to be distributed? And then be out in front of it. Why don't you participate in that money? It goes somewhere. So you're not going to resist this stuff. You have to it's going to pass. We know this is going to pass.
Yeah. Well, and I love your mindset around it. People get so angry about it, right? Because they feel like, it's their tax dollars and everything else. And I get that. But instead of just sitting around being angry, try to think of, how can I take advantage of this money? Because people are going to reap the benefits of it by doing what the government wants, which is investing into affordable housing.
Guys, think of the money. It's $2.3 trillion. It's going out into the economy. Why not be on the other side of that? Why not be the recipient for some of that?
Right.
Because these things are going to pass. Yes, they're controversial. Yes, they're going to be fought and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day,
there's nothing you can do.
It's not. Yeah. Obviously, you're not going to have any part of the unemployment stuff or the money that goes straight to the people or anything like that, or the PPP. But on these other big thing, that's what big government contractors do.
Well, that's what MC looks into as well. You guys are always trying to see what fits into your scope that the government wants you to do.
Yeah, the government tells you. Like my partner Ross was on the Housing Finance Agency in Arizona, and they basically said, we have affordability issues in these areas. And so he was on the board with the governor, and the governor, he's like, okay, how can I help? Well, we need communities built in these particular areas. And by the way, the state has money for it. So this is how business works. So you just be in the right places so that you can start to participate on the front end of, how this money is going to be disseminated through the economy, and it will be for years to come. Just be out in front of it.
And, David says he feels that the federal housing credit is fixed for bigger developers. Do you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
I don't. There's no good old boy network, trust me, especially with that kind of money. There's proper RFPs, or requests for proposals, in there. Now, if you don't have any experience building housing, of course, that's one of the requirements. But that's the same thing a bank would say. He's like, well, have you done this before? So what you need to do is put together a team for that kind of stuff and put it together. I know of friends of mine that have done stuff up in Alaska, with the Native American tribes, and they brought in Native American people as part of their company, and they went and got these big contracts. And so there is a way to put all this stuff together. If you have no experience, of course, but that's not going to be the big just because you're a big company.
Okay, very good. And then Dave Calico says, "Hey Ken, how are you?"
How's it going?
Anyways, so let's get to some of our questions for premium. So can you, let's see here. So Darlene wanted to know, with lumber prices continuing to go up, when can she expect to see that, in the housing?
Gosh, yeah. Well, it's already showing up. So it's already there. I mean, just go to National Home Builders, NAHQ, I think it is, National Home Building Corp, something like that. Sorry, but anyway, just go on there. I last time I went, they said that the average home went up, I think, $24.5 million. That's a lot, just because of those prices, not necessarily just lumber. So it's already showing up. So especially on the housing. Let's say you are building something, and you have the lot. Trust me, the subcontractors that are bringing, they're buying that product. They've already marked it up, so you're already seeing it. It's already in place.
Okay. And Allie wanted to know, a lot of real estate agents on YouTube, feel that the real estate market is not going to crash. They're dismissing that. What do you think?
Of course they are. Commissions. So, next. I mean, listen, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying the whole market's going to crash. I haven't said that. But guys, you can't have 4 people bidding on one house. I mean, I think that's the number.
I think there's been like 7 even.
Well, yeah. So I mean, it depends on the market, but this is not normal. 6 months of inventory is normal. So these prices are pushing up. Is it going to continue for the next 10 years? Of course not. Mm-hmm. Is there going to be a correction? Of course. The question is when.
And how much.
Yeah, and how much. And so, obviously they're going to take that position.
Right.
And they might be right, but the point is it is going to crash. Same stuff happened in 2007. I remember I was in the middle of it, and
nobody thought anything was going to crash.
Of course not, right? Yeah, and so it will crash for sure, and nobody knows.
Yeah, nobody knows exactly when. It also depends on how long the government keeps bumping these programs.
Follow the math, guys. Just follow the math. We have an affordability crisis is our biggest issue right now. I'm doing a YouTube video on that. We have an affordability crisis.
Well, and it's going to get worse.
It's already bad.
It's getting worse, yeah. Now, JC, he's in Phoenix, Arizona, but just in general, he said, would you buy a primary residence now or wait till the mortgage forbearance runs out? It's a good question.
That is a great question. It depends on where. Now, I hate to use the word depends because that drives me nuts when people say it depends. But the truth is, I actually think Phoenix is pretty darn affordable, personally. As you start to look at some of the other markets, it's very affordable, even though it's very competitive. So I think you bought a place in Scottsdale just 3 or 4 months ago for $250,000.
$270,000, yeah.
Oh, $270,000. Okay. I think that's pretty affordable.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Seattle, San Francisco, LA, right. All of it's way more expensive.
Yeah, and it was a rental, so you got a renter in there. But the point is, I think it has a lot to do with that, but it also has a lot to do with whether you're going to stay there long term, but also from a forbearance standpoint. What I would do is I would go on a Black Knight, and I would start to look at the detail. And actually, this is tracked on a number of websites. You can actually see which counties are the most in trouble. Mm-hmm. And I would start there. I would go straight to the county. I actually think you can go down into the cities too, because it's all tracked. All that information, all that I think last time I looked, there were 3.5 million people that were in big trouble, and some sites say there's more. But regardless, all that stuff's gonna hit the fan soon, and it's all gonna be in different spots.
Yep. So Erica from Premium wanted to know, she owns a rental in a hot market, and they have a vacancy opening up soon. And she added some pricing in there, but when do they know when to sell or keep renting it if they want to cash out?
So if you want to cash out, then now's the time. But I don't, the problem is, same issue I have. Then what?
Right. What are you going to do with the money?
Stick your money in cash, and what are you going to come back in it when the market's high? So and then potentially inflation. So if you have something that's cash flowing, and you guys know I'm a cash flow guy, so I love cash flow. If this property is cash flowing and you have a lot of equity in it, I would figure out a way to keep it cash flowing and continue to do more, exactly like you did. So you just bought one a few months ago. It cash flows $270,000, and the rents more than cover all your expenses. So you're still buying during this market. If the issue is your down payment, then obviously you got to be a little bit careful because you're coming in at a high price.
And what you like to say, when you sell, you get rich, but when you cash flow, you get wealthy.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the numbers. So let's say you sell, you're going to have depreciation recapture, you're going to have a capital gain, and you're going to have to try to figure out how to, invest that money again.
And she also said something interesting I didn't read. She said that she'll make around $95,000, and to her calculations, it would take her 12 years to make that much money. But what I don't think she's factoring in is inflation.
Yeah, of course. You got to factor inflation in, guys. I mean, the government's already said that it's a 2%. So in 10 years that your money's devalued by 20%.
At least, yeah.
Just based on what they've already told you.
Right, exactly. So Kevin has a good question for all you beginners out there. He's from Premium. He's new, and he wants to know, does he crawl, walk, or run in his approach to real estate investing? He likes big projects, and he wants to know, should he start with the world is when he was looking for a rental, or should he just start with local, and what should he do?
Yeah. So good question, Kevin. We get this a lot. I always believe that you should start small and start local. Always. So because you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but everybody wants to jump in at a high level, but truth is you don't bring any value.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about you, but if you said that you're new, what do you bring to the table other than the willingness to want to do it? And so, you have to be thinking about that. Now, once you get some experience under your belt and you start doing this a few times, then of course you're going to be something that somebody's going to want to do something with, especially if they've gone well. So start small. And you're going to make a tremendous amount of mistakes, Kevin, that you don't even know. Like, it's just you're going to make mistakes on the way you buy it, mistakes on the management, mistakes on your renter, mistakes with your contractors. There's going to be a zillion things that you just don't do right. And you have to kind of go through those things. And that all of a sudden, having done that, you now come out of this with somebody who says, okay, this guy's been doing it a while. He's obviously got a few like you. You've got 3 now. Right? Can you imagine from the time you started to now what you've learned?
A lot. Like,
right?
It's been definitely learning every step of the way.
Yeah, like there's just stuff that happens almost every week on your stuff, right?
Yep.
Almost every week.
But I will tell you, when you get one, you get the second one quicker, because if you have a cash flowing property, it helps you save for your next cash flowing property.
So you got she has tenant issues, she has HOA issues, she has contract issues, she has payment issues, she's got mortgage issues. So all that stuff, Kevin, all comes out, and you start to deal with these things, and you obviously become smarter and better for the next one.
Yeah, and it is worth it. But yes, you want to know. I can't imagine jumping into something big, even now with 3. I don't think I'm ready for a multifamily yet.
Yeah, so
Lynn from Premium wanted to know, any tips or advice on finding cheap rehab projects without running into bidding wars?
Wow. Well, if you can figure that out, man, let me know. We're in the middle of a bid. We're right now we found 2 value adds in Texas, and we are putting them in contract right now. And I would tell you, it's super competitive. It's just beyond competitive. And I haven't figured that out, but keep looking, because they're out there, and I know there are lots of people that are doing it, and it's really a deal flow issue. You can't be just looking at one deal a day. Even you have to be looking at multiple deals and saying no to a lot of things. It's volume and velocity. Yep.
And Janet wanted to let you know that they bought 4 single-family rentals at the end of 2020 in Scottsdale, and best decision that they've made. They said as long as it doesn't crash. But as long as you're cash flowing, doesn't matter,
guys. Listen, I crashed in 2008, 9, and 10. I had bought stuff before that. I've been doing this business a long time. So I owned stuff that my equity went down like that. But you know what saved me? my renters.
Yeah.
So
doesn't matter.
I
You
had
got a fixed mortgage.
I had a fixed mortgage. The rents did not go down. What happened when the housing crash happened? People moved into rentals, so it put more pressure on rentals, and so we did not have issues with our income coming in. Now, if I would have sold it, I wouldn't have been good. But I wasn't. These are long-term investments, so don't be so freaked out about the values as much as you are about the cash flow. That's why I'm a cash flow guy versus capital gain.
Fixed mortgage and cash flow.
Yeah, just fix your mortgage. Know what your number is. Your expenses are going to go up a little bit over time, and hopefully your rent goes up a little bit over time. But every single housing bubble that crashes, every single one, puts more pressure on rentals.
Stone from YouTube has a really good question. He says, what keeps Ken awake at night? Well, you don't get very stressed out about anything, but... No, gosh. Coffee? I don't know. Not much. That's the truth. Yeah.
I don't really stress about much. I meditate. I take a lot of personal time. I work out. I de-stress as much as I can. And I will tell you this, when I don't work out, my staff knows it. It's like,
or when you go on a cleanse.
Yeah, or on a cleanse. I do 2 cleanses a year. I don't really stress too much about much.
Okay. And then, so Chris from Premium wanted to know, he would love to know how you break down fees and profits between the GPs and the LPs.
Sure.
For the multifamily.
Yeah. So here's the way it works. So under a traditional GP, which is general partner, limited partner, LP scenario, and not all of them are like this. Those are, that's just one scenario. Typically, the limited partners are the ones that bring the money. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really important factor. So all the money goes into the limited partnership, period. The general partner would be the person putting together the deal. So that'd be a guy like me or a guy like Chris, right? So let's say, Chris, you put together a deal. You might say, I'm gonna take 20% of the deal as the general partner, and I need 100% of the money is going to go into the limited partnership. So the way that would work, 20% GP, 80% LP. So all the money goes over to the LP side, but the partnership is still 80-20. Mm-hmm. Then what you would do is the money is going to want something, okay? You can't just get people's money and expect them not to want anything. So they're going to say, what's my preferred return going to be? And the preferred return is going to be something like, let's say I'm getting money from you and you're making 3 or 4% somewhere. You're going to want more than that from me. Mm-hmm. So you're going to there's a cost on that equity that I'm going to have to pay to the LPs. So you can have 1 LP or you can have 50 LPs or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It all is money. So, and they're all going to want to get paid something. So this is why buying a cash flow property is so important. Because if I'm going to pay, let's say 6% on that money, on the equity as an example, then I damn well better make sure that the property is generating at least 6%. So let's say I get $1 million. I owe $60,000 a year on that money, regardless if the property produces it or not. So all the cash flow first goes there. So let's say I make $70,000 on a property, and the first 60 goes to pay the equity. Mm-hmm. The last 10,000 actually falls onto the 80-20 split. Yeah. So you got 10 grand splitting 80-20, right? So that's how that works. And and that's the way it should work because you're not putting any money up. And so that's why these cash out refis and these value adds and all these other things are so important. And you always want to take care of your investors and you always want to take care of the investment. And if you're raising capital and putting it into a deal, then you want the deal to pay that money because people just forget about the cost of capital, the cost of equity. They always know the cost of their debt, right, but they always don't consider the cost of capital. So one of the things that happens in my new construction deals is, let's say we have $20 million of equity. Again, so let's use that 6%. So that means I owe $1.2 million a year on that $20 million. And guess what vacant land produces? 0. So year 1, I owe $1.2 million. Year 2, I owe $1.2 million. And the thing's just being built. So now before we even open, I owe $2.4 million. So in year 3, we start to lease up, let's say, I owe another $1.2 million. So now at $3.6 million, I owe by the end of the 3rd year. On the $20 million, I still owe the $20 million. So now really I owe $23.6 million. So then now the property has to start paying that back. And so that's the whole game of real estate, and that's how the GPLP works.
So Joyce has a good question on YouTube. This will be the last one. It says, for high income earning people, which will be a good strategy? Buying single family or investing in apartment buildings in order to build wealth?
So this boils down to time, in my opinion. So we get this question a lot. And actually, I had this question the other day with my nephew. He's like, I'm not buying anymore. Remember? Yeah. He's like, I'm not buying. I'm selling off some stuff, and I'm just going to start investing in deals. He's busy. And he's got a family of 3 kids and his wife. And so he's like, listen, I just want to put my money with somebody that I trust and monitor the quarterly statements. So it has to do with time. The reason that he is frustrated is because he doesn't have the time. He gets HOA calls, he gets tenant calls, he's got people moving out, he's got maintenance issues, and he just doesn't want to deal with it.
Right.
So a lot of it has to do with that, and some of it has to do with, if it's. I've had people that have come and invested with us to learn our system.
Yeah. And
then left and started their own.
Right.
Totally fine. I had one of some of my early investors was Steve Jobs, CFO of all people, right? So they invested with us early on, 10 years ago, and they had thrown a lot of money into some early deals, and then they went and did a bunch of their own stuff in the Palo Alto area, all single families. So it was just, and they were like, hey, we wanted to learn how to do it, and thank you, and now they're off doing it on their own. So it's a time issue.
You have to understand too, it's not like, we teach a lot about cash flowing real estate, and so regardless of whether you invest in your own single family homes or if you invest with an investment company, they have to know what they're doing. Like either you have to 100% know what you're doing and really understand the right property to buy, how to determine if it cash flows, or whoever you invest with, you have to make sure that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a big one. And that's why, and we did a video on how to read a business plan. And so if you are going to invest with somebody, make sure you check that out, because there are some things that you definitely want to ask. And people can put anything they want into a business plan.
Yeah.
I've seen that firsthand. Yeah. And, you need to be able to ask the right questions before you put your hard-earned money with somebody. And sometimes it's, a trust thing too. People are like, listen, I trust myself. I'm going to buy the property next door.
Yeah. You have full control that way too.
I love that strategy. There's nothing wrong with that strategy at all.
As long as you know what you're doing.
As long as you know what you're doing.
And you have the time.
Yeah. And it's really, it's a great strategy to, to buy something that you're super familiar with, throw a renter in there, and call it a day.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you guys again next Monday.
See you guys.
If you want to be able to ask questions, we always answer all the premium questions. Head to kenmcelroy.com/premium.